Inception. In 2010, Christopher Nolan's Inception left audiences debating one of cinema's most ambiguous endings. The film follows Dom Cobb, a skilled thief who steals secrets from people's subconscious through shared dreaming technology. Throughout the movie, Cobb uses a spinning top as his totem, a personal object that helps him distinguish dreams from reality. In dreams, the top spins indefinitely, but in reality, it eventually falls. The film's final scene shows Cobb reuniting with his children after completing one final job. But as he spins his top to verify he's awake, the camera cuts to black while the top is still spinning, though it appears to wobble slightly. Nolan has stated in interviews that he deliberately left the ending open to interpretation, refusing to confirm whether Cobb is dreaming or awake. Some viewers argue the slight wobble indicates the top will fall, meaning Cobb truly made it home. Others point out that Cobb walks away from the top without checking it, suggesting he no longer cares whether he's dreaming as long as he's with his children. This ambiguity sparked countless online debates and video essays, cementing Inception as a film designed to generate discussion rather than provide concrete answers. Sixth Sense. Malcolm Crowe is dead. The Sixth Sense, released in 1999, features one of cinema's most famous twist endings. Bruce Willis plays Dr. Malcolm Crowe, a child psychologist treating a young boy named Cole Sear who claims to see dead people. Throughout the film, Crowe appears to be working through his own trauma after being shot by a former patient in the opening scene. The twist reveals that Crowe died from that gunshot wound and has been a ghost the entire movie, which explains why his wife ignores him, why he only appears in scenes with Cole, and why he's always wearing the same clothes. Director M. Night Shyamalan carefully planted clues throughout the film, including the fact that nobody except Cole ever directly speaks to or interacts with Crowe, that Crowe never physically touches anything or opens any doors himself, and that the color red appears prominently in scenes connected to the supernatural. The film grossed $672 million worldwide and earned 6 Academy Award nominations, largely due to audiences returning to theaters to catch the clues they missed. This twist redefined the ghost story genre and established Shyamalan as a master of narrative misdirection. Mission Impossible. Jim Phelps, the trusted mentor, is the traitor. In the 1996 film adaptation of Mission Impossible, Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, is framed when his entire Impossible Missions Force team is killed during a mission in Prague. The film leads audiences to believe that someone within the intelligence community is selling secrets, and Hunt spends most of the movie trying to identify the mole. The shocking twist reveals that Jim Phelps, Hunt's mentor and team leader played by Jon Voight, orchestrated the entire operation to steal the knock list, a database containing the identities of all covert agents. Phelps faked his own death during the Prague mission and planned to sell the list to an arms dealer named Max. The betrayal hits particularly hard because Phelps was the beloved protagonist of the original television series that ran from 1966 to 1973, making his villainous turn a controversial choice among longtime fans. Hunt discovers the truth by analyzing small inconsistencies in Phelps' story and realizing that only Phelps knew the Bible verse used as the mission code phrase. Specifically, Phelps had communicated with Max using a Bible from Chicago's Drake Hotel, with messages encoded in passages like Job 3:14. This twist established the franchise's recurring theme of institutional betrayal and trust within espionage organizations. GoldenEye. Alec Trevelyan, Agent 006, is the villain. GoldenEye, released in 1995, opens with James Bond and Alec Trevelyan, played by Sean Bean, infiltrating a Soviet chemical weapons facility in 1986. During the mission, Trevelyan is apparently killed by Colonel Urumov. 9 years later, Bond investigates the theft of the GoldenEye satellite weapon and discovers that Trevelyan not only survived, but orchestrated his own death to fake his demise. Trevelyan reveals himself as the head of the Janus crime syndicate, seeking revenge against Britain for betraying his Cossack parents after World War II. The personal betrayal cuts deeper because Bond and Trevelyan were friends and colleagues. Trevelyan's plan involves using the GoldenEye electromagnetic pulse weapon to rob the Bank of England electronically while erasing all financial records, making the theft untraceable. This twist marked a significant departure for the Bond franchise, which typically featured villains with no personal connection to the protagonist. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide, and successfully relaunched the franchise with Pierce Brosnan as the new Bond. Last Crusade. Elsa Schneider is a Nazi agent. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, released in 1989, Indiana Jones teams up with Dr. Elsa Schneider, an Austrian art professor who has been working with his father, Henry Jones Sr., to find the Holy Grail. Elsa and Indiana develop a romantic relationship, and she appears to be a genuine ally throughout their quest. The twist reveals that Elsa is actually working for the Nazi regime and has been using both Jones' men to manipulate them into doing the dangerous work of solving the Grail's puzzles and traps. She seduced both father and son to manipulate them into advancing her agenda. Her true allegiance becomes clear when she leads the Nazis to the Grail's temple and attempts to take it across the Great Seal, despite warnings about its consequences. Elsa's character represents the classic femme fatale archetype, but with added complexity because she genuinely seems conflicted about her choices. Her death comes from her own greed when she refuses to let go of the Grail despite falling into a chasm, choosing the artifact over salvation. This betrayal twist reinforced the franchise's themes about the corrupting nature of pursuing ancient power and the dangers of misplaced trust. The Fugitive. Helen Kimball died in a case of mistaken identity. The Fugitive, released in 1993, follows Dr. Richard Kimball as he searches for the one-armed man he believes murdered his wife, Helen. For most of the film, the murder appears to be a random home invasion gone wrong. The twist reveals that Helen's death was actually a professional hit ordered by Dr. Charles Nichols, Kimball's friend and colleague, and carried out by Frederick Sykes, the one-armed man. Nichols ordered the hit because Kimball had discovered that the drug Provasic, which Nichols was developing, was causing liver damage in patients. Kimball was about to expose the fraudulent research, which would have cost Nichols millions in funding from a pharmaceutical company. Helen was not the intended target, but she was home when Sykes arrived to kill Kimball, making her death a tragic case of wrong place, wrong time. The revelation transforms the story from a manhunt thriller into a conspiracy drama, showing how corporate greed and medical fraud led to an innocent woman's death. U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard, played by Tommy Lee Jones, ultimately helps Kimball expose the conspiracy and capture both Nichols and Sykes. The film won Jones an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and grossed over $368 million worldwide. Total Recall. Was it all just a memory implant? Total Recall, released in 1990, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Douglas Quaid, deliberately leaves viewers uncertain whether the entire plot actually happened or was just an implanted fantasy that never actually occurred. Quaid visits Recall, a company that implants artificial memories of vacations, and requests a trip to Mars as a secret agent. During the procedure, something goes wrong, and Quaid appears to have actual memories of being a spy named Hauser. The rest of the film follows Quaid to Mars, where he uncovers a conspiracy and leads a rebellion. However, multiple clues suggest everything after the Recall visit is the implanted fantasy. Dr. Edgemar, who appears midway through the film, claims Quaid is still in the chair at Recall, trapped in a paranoid delusion. The doctor warns that if Quaid doesn't accept the reality pill, he will suffer a permanent schizoid embolism, which matches exactly what the Recall technician predicted before the procedure if something went wrong. Additionally, every adventure that unfolds matches precisely what Quaid requested from his fantasy package, including romancing a beautiful secret agent. Director Paul Verhoeven intentionally included evidence supporting both interpretations. The film's final scene shows Quaid achieving his perfect ending on Mars, suggesting he's either truly escaped or is living out his implanted fantasy. This ambiguous ending has sparked decades of debate about whether Quaid saved Mars or is still unconscious in a chair, living out an elaborate delusion. Blade Runner. Rick Deckard is a replicant. Blade Runner, released in 1982, follows Rick Deckard, a Blade Runner tasked with hunting down and retiring rogue replicants, bioengineered humans with limited lifespans. Throughout the film, subtle clues suggest that Deckard himself might be a replicant, despite believing he's human. In the original theatrical cut, the ending was deliberately ambiguous. However, director Ridley Scott's 2007 Final Cut version makes the implication much clearer. Key evidence includes Deckard's recurring unicorn dream, which mirrors an origami unicorn left by fellow officer Gaff at the end, suggesting Gaff knows Deckard's implanted memories. Deckard shows surprising empathy toward the replicants he's hunting, particularly Rachel, and displays less physical prowess than expected for someone who hunts superhuman replicants, barely surviving his confrontations. Scott has confirmed in multiple interviews that he always intended Deckard to be a replicant, though screenwriter Hampton Fancher and Harrison Ford, who played Deckard, have disagreed with this interpretation. The ambiguity serves the film's central themes about the nature of humanity and what separates artificial beings from natural ones. Fight Club. Tyler Durden is a dissociative identity. Fight Club, released in 1999, features one of the most psychologically complex twists in film history. The unnamed narrator, played by Edward Norton, befriends the charismatic Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, and together they create an underground fighting club that evolves into a terrorist organization called Project Mayhem. The twist reveals that Tyler Durden doesn't exist as a separate person, but is actually a dissociative identity created by the narrator's fractured psyche. The narrator has been Tyler all along, committing all of Tyler's actions during episodes he cannot remember. Clues are planted throughout, including the fact that other characters never address both the narrator and Tyler in the same scene. Tyler appears at moments when the narrator is at his most distressed, and Tyler's philosophy represents everything the narrator subconsciously desires but consciously suppresses. The film depicts dissociative identity disorder as emerging from the narrator's insomnia, dead-end corporate job, and suppressed masculinity, though mental health professionals have noted this is a dramatized and not entirely accurate portrayal of the condition. The narrator created Tyler as an idealized version of himself, someone free from societal constraints and consumer culture. Director David Fincher included split-second flashes of Tyler appearing before his official introduction in the film, visible only on repeated viewings. The ending shows the narrator shooting himself in the mouth to symbolically end Tyler, choosing to destroy his alter ego even at the risk of his own life. Memento. Leonard already solved his wife's murder and is being manipulated. Memento, released in 2000, follows Leonard Shelby, a man with anterograde amnesia who cannot form new memories after suffering a head injury during an attack that killed his wife. Leonard uses Polaroid photographs and tattoos to track information as he searches for his wife's killer. The film's innovative structure gradually reveals that Leonard actually ended the life of his wife's real attacker, John G., over a year ago. Teddy, a corrupt cop played by Joe Pantoliano, has been manipulating Leonard's condition to use him as a hitman, feeding him false information to target people Teddy wants eliminated. The most devastating revelation comes when it's suggested that Leonard actually caused his own wife's death through repeated insulin injections, not the attacker. Leonard's wife survived the assault but couldn't cope with his condition, so she tested whether his amnesia was real by asking him to administer multiple insulin injections. He complied each time, having no memory of previous injections, ultimately causing her death. Leonard knows subconsciously that he's responsible, but chooses to suppress this truth, deliberately creating a false narrative where he's still hunting for a killer who no longer exists. Natalie and Teddy both attempt to exploit Leonard's condition for their own purposes, showing how his disability makes him vulnerable to manipulation. The film's final scene, which is chronologically the first, shows Leonard choosing to make Teddy his next target, consciously deciding to lie to his future self to maintain his sense of purpose. This twist reveals Leonard as both victim and perpetrator, trapped in a cycle of violence he orchestrates against himself. Looper. Joe ends his own life to save the future. Looper, released in 2012, presents a complex time travel paradox where assassins called loopers end the lives of targets sent from the future. Joe, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, confronts his older self, played by Bruce Willis, who has traveled back in time to prevent his wife's future murder by ending the child who will grow up to be the crime boss known as the Rainmaker. Young Joe protects Sarah and her son Sid, gradually realizing that Sid is developing powerful telekinetic abilities and will become the Rainmaker if he witnesses his mother's death, which would traumatize him into becoming a monster. Old Joe is determined to end Sid to save his wife in the future, while young Joe recognizes that protecting Sarah and preventing her death is the only way to ensure Sid grows up stable and doesn't become the villain who creates this entire timeline. In the film's climactic moment, young Joe realizes that the cycle can only be broken if old Joe ceases to exist, which means young Joe must cease to exist as well. He ends his own life, causing old Joe to instantly vanish from the timeline, thereby preventing the traumatic event that would have turned Sid evil. This act erases the dystopian future where the Rainmaker rises to power and old Joe's wife is killed. The twist demonstrates the predestination paradox, where attempting to prevent a future event actually causes it, and the only solution is to remove oneself from the equation entirely. Director Rian Johnson deliberately avoided explaining every detail of the time travel mechanics, focusing instead on the emotional relationship between the protagonist and his older self as they work toward resolution. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every new upload. Thanks for watching.